friends. I hope you have had a great weekend. We're ready today to read chapter 9. This one is called Wilbur's Boast. Do you know what it means to boast? Boasting means to kind of like brag about things. So let's see what Wilbur's going to be bragging about and boasting about today. A spider's web is stronger than it looks. Although it's made of thin, delicate strands, the web is not easily broken. However, a web gets torn every day by the insects that kick around in it, and a spider must rebuild it when it gets full of holes. Charlotte liked to do her weaving during the late afternoon, and Fern liked to sit nearby and watch. One afternoon, she heard a most interesting conversation, and she witnessed a very strange event. "You have awfully hairy legs, Charlotte," said Wilbur, as the spider busily worked at her task. "Well, my legs are hairy for good reason," replied Charlotte. "Furthermore, each leg of mine has 7 sections: the coax, the trochanter, the femur, the patella, the tibia, the metatarsus, and the tarsus." Wilbur sat bolt upright. "You're kidding," he said. "No, I'm not either." "Say those names again. I didn't catch them the first time." Coax, trochanter, I'm not even saying the word right. Trochanter, femur, patella, tibia, metatarsus, and tarsus. "Goodness," said Wilbur, looking down at his own chubby legs. "I don't think my legs have 7 sections." "Well," said Charlotte, "you and I lead different lives. You don't have to spin a web, and that takes real leg work." "I could spin a web if I tried," said Wilbur, boasting. "I've just never tried." "Well, then let's see you do it," said Charlotte. Fern chuckled softly, and her eyes grew wide with love for the pig. Why do you think Fern chuckled? That Wilbur thought he could spin a web. "Okay," replied Wilbur. "You coach me, and I'll spin one. It must be a lot of fun to spin a web. How do I start?" "Take a deep breath," said Charlotte, smiling. Wilbur breathed deeply. "Now, climb to the highest place that you can get to, like this." Charlotte raced up to the top of the doorway. Wilbur scrambled up to the top of his manure pile. "Very good," said Charlotte. "Now, make it an attachment with your spinnerets. Hurl yourself into space and let out a drag line as you go down." Wilbur hesitated just a moment, and then he jumped out into the air. He glanced hastily behind him to see if there was a piece of rope following him to check his fall. But nothing seemed to be happening in his rear, and the next thing he knew, he landed with a thump. "Oof," he grunted. Charlotte laughed so hard, her web began to sway. "What did I do wrong?" asked the pig when he recovered from his bump. "Nothing," said Charlotte. "It was a nice try." "I think I'll try again," said Wilbur cheerfully. "I believe what I need is a little piece of string to hold me." The pig walked out to his yard. "Are you there, Templeton?" he called. The rat poked his head out from under the trough. "Do you have a little piece of string I could borrow?" asked Wilbur. "I need it to spin a web." "Yes, indeed," replied Templeton, who saved string. "No trouble at all. Anything to oblige." He crept down into his hole and pushed the goose egg out of the way, and he returned with an old piece of dirty white string. Wilbur examined it. "That's just the thing," he said. "Tie one into my tail, will you, Templeton?" Wilbur crouched low, with his thin, curly tail towards the rat. Templeton seized the string, passed it around the end of the pig's tail, and tied it 2 half hitches. Charlotte watched in delight. Like Fern, she was truly fond of Wilbur, whose smelly pen and stale food attracted the flies that she needed, and she was proud to see that he was not a quitter, and he was willing to try again to spin a web. While the rat and the spider and the little girl watched, Wilbur climbed again to the top of the manure pile, full of energy and hope. And there's a picture of Templeton tying the string to Wilbur's tail. "Everybody watch!" he cried, and summoning all his strength, he threw himself into the air head first. The string trailed along behind him. But as he had neglected to fasten the other end to anything else, it really didn't do any good. And Wilbur landed with a thud, crushed and hurt. Tears came to his eyes. Templeton just grinned. Charlotte sat quietly. After a bit, she spoke. You can't spin a web, Wilbur, and I advise you to put the idea out of your mind. You lack two things that are needed for spinning a web. What are they? Asked Wilbur sadly. You lack spinnerets, and you lack know-how. Here's a picture of Wilbur jumping off of his manure pile with the string attached to his tail trying to spin a web. What Charlotte mean you lacked know-how? I think she meant he just didn't know how to do it, right? But cheer up, you don't need a web. Zuckerman supplies you with 3 big meals a day. Why should you worry about trapping food? Wilbur sighed. Oh, you are so much cleverer and brighter than I am, Charlotte. I guess I was just trying to show off. Serves me right. Templeton untied a string and he took it back to his home. Charlotte returned to her weaving. You needn't feel too bad, Wilbur, she said. Not many creatures can spin webs. Even men are not as good at it as spiders, although they think they're pretty good. And they'll try anything. Did you ever hear of the Queensboro Bridge? Wilbur shook his head. Is it a web? Sort of, replied Charlotte. But do you know how long it took them to build it? 8 whole years. My goodness, I would have starved to death waiting that long. I can build a web in a single evening. Well, what do people catch in the Queensboro Bridge? Bugs? Asked Wilbur. No, said Charlotte. They don't catch anything. They just keep trotting back and forth across the bridge, thinking that there's something better on the other side. If they'd hang down at the top of the thing and just wait quietly, maybe something good would come along. But no, with men, it's always rush, 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 rush every minute. I'm glad I'm a sedentary spider. What do you think that word sedentary means? If men rush, 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 and she thinks that's not such a good idea, what do you think the word sedentary means? Oh, look at Wilbur. What does sedentary mean? He asked the same questions. Asked Wilbur. Well, it means I sit still a good part of the time, and I don't go wandering all over creation. I know a good thing when I see it, and my web is a good thing. I stay put, and I wait for what comes. It gives me a chance to think. Well, I'm sort of sedentary myself, I guess, said the pig. I have to hang around here whether I want to or not. You know where I'd really like to be this evening? Where? In a forest, looking for beech nuts and truffles and delectable roots, pushing leaves aside with my wonderful strong nose, searching and sniffing along the ground, smelling and smelling and smelling. You smell just the way you are, remarked a lamb who had just walked in. I can smell you from here. You're the smelliest creature in this place. Wilbur hung his head, and his eyes grew wet with tears. Charlotte noticed his embarrassment, and she spoke sharply to the lamb. Let Wilbur alone, she said. He has a perfect right to smell, considering his surroundings. You're no bundle of sweet peas yourself. Furthermore, you're interrupting a very pleasant conversation. Now, what were we talking about, Wilbur, when we were so rudely interrupted? I don't remember, said Wilbur. It doesn't make any difference. Let's not talk anymore for a while, Charlotte. I'm getting sleepy. You go ahead and finish fixing your web, and I'll just lie here and watch you. It's a lovely evening. Wilbur stretched out on his side. Twilight settled over Zuckerman's barn, and a feeling of peace. Fern knew it was almost supper time, but she just couldn't bear to leave. Swallows passed on silent wings in and out the doorways, bringing food to their young ones. From across the road, a bird sang, "Whippoorwill, whippoorwill." Lurvy sat down under an apple tree and lit his pipe. The animal sniffed the familiar smell of strong tobacco. Wilbur heard the trill of the tree toad and an occasional slamming of the kitchen door. All of these sounds made him feel comfortable and happy, for he loved life and he loved being a part of the world on a summer evening. But as he lay there, he remembered what the old sheep had told him. The thought of death came to him, and he began to tremble with fear. "Charlotte," he said softly. "Yes, Wilbur." "I don't want to die." "Well, of course you don't," said Charlotte in a comforting voice. "I just love it here in the barn," said Wilbur. "I love everything about this place." "Of course you do," said Charlotte. "We all do." The goose appeared, followed by her 7 goslings. They thrust their little necks out and kept up a musical whistling like a tiny little troop of pipers. Wilbur listened to the sound with love in his heart. "Charlotte," he said. "Yes," said the spider. "Were you serious when you promised you would keep them from killing me?" "I was never more serious in my life. I am not going to let you die, Wilbur." "How are you going to save me?" asked Wilbur, whose curiosity was very strong at this point. "Well," said Charlotte vaguely, "I don't really know, but I am working on a plan." "That's wonderful," said Wilbur. "How's the plan coming, Charlotte? Have you got very far with it? Is it coming along pretty well?" Wilbur was trembling again, but Charlotte was cool and collected. "Oh, it's coming all right," she said lightly. "The plan is still in its early stages and hasn't completely shaped up yet, but I'm working on it." "When do you work on it?" begged Wilbur. "When I'm hanging head down at the top of my web. That's when I do my thinking, because all the blood runs to my head." "I'd be only too glad to help in any way I can." "Oh, I'll work it out alone," said Charlotte. "I can think better if I'm alone." "All right," said Wilbur. "But don't fail to let me know if there's anything I can do to help, no matter how slight." "Well," replied Charlotte, "you must try to build yourself up. I want you to get plenty of sleep and stop worrying. Never hurry and never worry. Chew your food thoroughly and eat every bit of it, except you must leave enough for Templeton. Gain weight and stay well. That's the way you can help. Keep fit and don't lose your nerve. You think you understand?" "Yes, I understand," said Wilbur. "Go along to bed then," said Charlotte. "Sleep is important." Wilbur trotted over to the darkest corner of his pen and threw himself down. He closed his eyes, and in another minute he spoke. "Charlotte," he said. "Yes, Wilbur." "May I go out to my trough and see if I left any of my supper? I think I left just a tiny bit of mashed potato." "Very well," said Charlotte, "but I want you back in bed again without delay." Wilbur started to race out to the yard. "Slowly, slowly," said Charlotte. "Never hurry and never worry." Wilbur checked himself and crept slowly to his trough. He found a little bit of potato and chewed it carefully. He swallowed it and walked back to bed. He closed his eyes and was silent for a while. "Charlotte," he said in a whisper. "Yes." "May I get a drink of milk? I think there's a few drops of milk left in my trough." "No. The trough is dry and I want you to go to sleep. No more talking. Close your eyes and go to sleep." Wilbur shut his eyes. Fern got up from her stool and started for home, her mind full of everything she had seen and heard. "Good night, Charlotte," said Wilbur. "Good night, Wilbur." There was a pause. "Good night, Charlotte." "Good night, Wilbur." "Good night." "Good night." Do you ever do that to your mom and dad? They tell you to go to bed and you think of one more thing you need to do, or you want a glass of milk, or you want a cup of water, or then you need to go to the bathroom. Was Wilbur really wanting all of those things? Why did he keep asking to go get some food and to check his trough for some milk? What do you think he was up to? What was he doing? Why didn't he just go on to bed? I remember doing that when I was a kid. I just wanted to stay up as long as I could so I would make up things to do until my mom was like, "No more, you have to go to bed." Has that ever happened to you? I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.